TPR.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the TPR Pod. My name is Ali. Today's episode is with somebody by the name of Baqar Hasan. Baqar is somebody we found through the podcast. He was on the Corona World Tour series. Why I wanted to talk to Baqar? He is somebody who used to be in the Pakistani military, the army specifically. The Pakistani military and specifically the army feature a lot in the Pakistani social discourse because of, political issues, security issues, a lot of things. And I've felt for a while that the discussions occurring, the conversations that were being had were very distant in the sense that people rarely spoke to somebody from the army and considered their context as a person. It was always either somebody at the very top of the army and the impact, good or bad, they were having, or it was at the very bottom, people losing their lives in various operations. Nobody in between, no context of what it means to be there for good or bad, what the human experience is like. It just so happened that I coincidentally spoke to some people who had indicated that Baqar, who had mentioned he was in the army in the Corona series, might be a good person to speak to. And when I reached out to him, it just so happened that he was also looking to speak to me about this very sort of thing. So things worked out. Coincidentally, we recorded the episode on the 14th of August, and as you see, it is being released on the 6th of September. Thematically very appropriate. We speak about a lot of things, as you'll see in the episode description with the timestamps. This is a very long episode, so those timestamps I expect will come in handy. Baqar spent, I think, about 10 years in the Pakistan Army. Spoke about the circumstances of how he joined, his experience in the military academy, his first assignment and being posted to FATA and the operations that were being conducted there, how he went to Siachen after, highest battleground in the world, as you might know. A lot of things in between. I didn't really push him to go deep and give me like some stories about, courage under fire or that sort of thing. I wasn't looking for that sort of material. It was just, my questions were basically around how he felt, how his communications with his family were, just what his experience was like. And then also we spoke about, his life after the army. So I'll keep this short. It's a very long episode, so we'll keep the intro tight. Do check it out, and I'd appreciate if you send us a comment or 15 about how you felt, if there was something new you found out in the episode, some new context. Most of our viewers are people who aren't subscribed, so maybe you should subscribe or follow or do whatever, just so that our stuff, if you like it, keeps being recommended to you. But yeah, without further ado, episode 119, Baqar Hasan, A Soldier Story.
Yeah, things are really, really, really good. Like I think I'm doing much better than a lot of other people that I know.
Okay.
Like in my family as well. But that could be like maybe I was looking for something anxiety inducing in my environment, and
Okay.
you
And
know,
you
lo
found
and
it?
behold, COVID. I feel like there was this really long period in my life when I actually left the army, and like I was doing everything that I could get my hands on.
Okay.
But at the same time, it just wasn't really satisfying. But now that like ever since COVID, I'm like performing at my optimum levels.
Oh, really? Hani, I remember when we spoke pehli dafa, I think last year when COVID started, you said something similar ke, I used to be in the army, so now when this is happening, I'm always looking for like something to really use that part of my
Oh
brain.
yeah,
Okay, there's a
I actually
problem.
did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's sort of.
you remember, man.
Uh-huh.
You have a good memory.
I mean, this is also something I do. And
Yeah, bread and butter.
but wo jo hai, I heard lockdowns back. Are they happening where you are in Australia?
They are actually, yes.
Okay.
We are notorious for lockdowns, like in Melbourne, in
Mm,
Victoria. It's the worst over
okay.
here.
But
Like it's
is it the same sort
six.
of situation where there were like थोड़े से लोग and full lockdown, or is it like काफी लोग are getting infected?
Not in Victoria.
Okay.
Victoria, there are not a lot of people.
Okay.
Not a lot of cases, but
Right.
like in ye log jo hai foreign, they don't wait at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is the sixth lockdown now, and I think the cases were about what 20 cases. That's
oh
it.
shit. Okay, that's not a lot. Yeah.
Whereas New South Wales, that they're completely different. They're not as well organized as Victoria is. Like,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
this is their second or third lockdown, and they have 400 cases.
Oh shit. Acha.
Yeah.
No, because the lockdown thing has worked well for Australia. Matlab कि you guys were, you know, for much of the last year, you didn't have to wear masks. Things were, you couldn't leave, which was like this weird prison sort of situation.
I know, but like if you say in the beginning, I think the execution was really good. They started off very well with what they did with the lockdowns and everything. But I think towards the finishing is not very well executed, because if you look in Britain, the people have already started going about their daily lives and businesses. Vaccination
because they pushed the vaccine
rollout is just they have an amazing program going on. Whereas in Australia, they haven't even I don't think it's not even 5% yet of the population that's vaccinated. Yeah, it's horrible. The vaccination rollout process is just.
I saw something in the news where they said that I don't know if this was the prime minister or somebody, but he had an option पिछले साल to like place an order for vaccines and he didn't, or वो time गुजर गया and then the demand got taken up.
So what they did was, in the beginning, they ordered a lot of AstraZeneca.
Oh, okay.
But now with the cases that emerged, and nobody wants to get AstraZeneca anymore. So, they pre-ordered in bulk quantities, and they invested a lot of money, and now it's just gonna go to waste. Yeah.
अगर आप पाकिस्तान में और आपको AstraZeneca लग रही है तो आप लगवा लें. ठीक है, don't ignore all of this.
I mean, vaccination is the way to go, man. I mean, whatever you get your hands on.
And 5%.
There's no other way.
There is no other way. Yeah, quite literally. क्योंकि इधर भी in Ireland where I live.
Oh, you live in Ireland?
I live in Ireland, huh? There's no, like, I was talking to somebody about this just yesterday. Local population mein na, there is no sense that we all collectively need to take precautions. There's like zero. It's like ya to lockdown hai ya sab nange ghum rahe hain, and that's like the two situations. Because up here, the sub getting Delta variant, this, that, everything. Abhar people without masks. Nobody gives a shit. Public transport now without masks. People take off their masks as if ke pata nahi kitne saalon se na we were like imprisoned by this device and now we're free. It's like, motherfucker, you didn't do anything. You did like.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, where I live in Melbourne, I haven't seen this sort of self-discipline in people anywhere in the world. Like,
I mean, apart from the Asians, बेचारे जो के कई सालों से कर रहे हैं, like this is like the thing that they do anyway.
What? How do you mean?
Like Asians wear masks, whenever.
Yeah. So, but no, like when you get ordered to do something, people like in Britain, they're notorious for not obeying law and order, especially if something's entrusted upon them.
Yeah.
And same is the case in New South Wales and other states in Australia, whereas in Melbourne it's different.
Is it a like developed country problem? Acha, Melbourne mein karte hain. Chalo, that's good.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. Because
so even after the lockdowns were ended, people were wearing masks and stuff. Everywhere you go, you see people wearing masks.
I mean, it's not a big deal, to wear a mask.
It's not, yeah. I mean, it's not that inconvenient, man.
And foreign comparisons, like the US is insane anyway. But they're like, bro, Nazi Germany maybe a scene tha. And I was like, let's calm down a bit.
Seriously, apples, oranges.
Yeah. This is how it starts. No, bro, that's how we seen. But yeah, it's weird that you also got in touch with me at the same time. I was thinking of getting in touch with you for this same sort of story. You're on holiday, you said?
I actually on holiday?
As in you've taken some time off or something, or you were
Oh no
taking
no
a
no no
semester
no
off?
no! I haven't taken semester. I've taken one less subject. That's it.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like I mean, actually, the first time that I shared a story on Twitter, that was back in 2015. I had actually just gotten out of Siachen,
Okay.
and
Okay.
yeah, I was stuck in limbo. I was staying with one of my relatives over there in Islamabad, and there was just nothing to do over there. And this one night, I was like, all right, I need, there's a lot going on inside, and I just need to, let it out. And I did, and a lot of people actually, a lot of journalists reached out to me, and at that point in time, I was actually in the army, and I didn't really like the idea of, scrutinizing it and on a granular level.
Yeah.
At that point in time. But when you reached out to me, I was like, oh no, he's chill because I've already,
I have
we've
no
spoken
stakes.
before.
I have no stakes
Yeah,
of
and
any sort.
yeah, you had no stakes at all, and yeah,
Yeah.
and I like your show.
Oh, okay.
As well.
I'm
So,
glad you do. But could be, I've had like this sort of kya kahein? I don't know if academic is the right word to associate with me, but I've had like, like an interest because army ka, especially on Twitter and now with all this fucking news people and politics people on Twitter, there's a lot of
yeah.
like talking about the army or army ye kar rahi hai or army ki nuksan वगैरह and nobody really talks.
You'll find that the polarized views. They either love the army or they hate the army.
Bro, yeah, exactly.
Nothing in between.
It's like Pakistan
Yeah.
का हर मसला आर्मी की वजह से और otherwise army से ज़्यादा important तो कुछ है ही, breathing से ज़्यादा important army है.
Yeah.
And none of these seem to be voiced by people who are actually in the army, and no one's actually talking to like normal people who were in the army. So
yeah, there's a good reason. There's a good reason for that, actually. First of all,
okay.
like we're not allowed to,
I was
be
wondering about
involved
that.
in
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah.
So and you can, voice your opinion as an individual, but when it comes to the actual institution, you can't really, especially when you're wearing the uniform, you can't go about willy nilly and just say stuff.
But also in this,
you represent the uniform.
Also in this politics wali conversation,
everything.
But politics wali conversation mein, everyone's talking about people at the very top who have like a level of influence that might affect things. But there's like thousands of people unke alawa bhi, who all just get caught up in like this army thappa discourse. And it's just something I've been curious about for a while, and bade ittifaqi baat hai ki you felt like you wanted to talk about something, and I wasn't sure if you could because I asked you. के सीन क्या है, I don't know what the requirements are. कल पता चला ऑस्ट्रेलिया से गायब हो गए या मैं गायब हो गया.
नहीं यार, मैं कौन सा कोई न्यूक्लियर सीक्रेट्स अपने बताने वाला हूँ.
Yeah, please. I don't
you know what I mean?
Like,
not that I know of any anyway.
Yeah. But
I mean, I think like at this point in time, what we've been through as an institution, I'm just talking about the army for the past 20, 25 years, the war and terror. I think these stories, it's so important for these stories to come out and, to be in the public, all right, in whichever way possible, basically. Now you have social media, and if you can actually resonate with people, and if people can actually, walk a mile in a soldier's boots, they may realize that, okay, these guys are actually giving their all on the borders.
Yeah. And like there is like
care.
Shit happening. Jiske liye, like,
yeah,
it's not like
intense.
an abstract.
It's not like it's not a utopia where everything's going about the way as it should. It's actually, on the contrary, very dystopic. It's this chaos everywhere. When I've been posted for 2.5 years in active battlefields, almost all the regions on the western border, and I have seen shit happen, man, like on a regular basis. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Those 2.5 years, it changes you, not just mentally, not just physiologically. Like it changes you, and it plays with your genes.
What's your before you joined the army, like what was your like background? Is your family like has a history of army people?
Not at all actually.
Or you were like the first or
people
something?
yeah the people in my family, they're education, like doctors and lawyers and stuff, and in science. But nobody, like I was the first one in the army in my family.
Oh, so what? Because I remember exam में ना जब O levels खत्म हुआ, A levels खत्म हुआ था in like 2005 or something. I was like, हाँ पता नहीं, somebody said it's a Navy join. I was like, all right, again, let's see. My parents were like super anti, not because they're like, we hate the idea, but they were like, jang ho gayi to kya hoga, that sort of vibe. And I was not as enthusiastic as somebody who'd be like arguing कि नहीं मुझे तो जाना. I was like, अच्छा चलो ठीक है, lumps, जहाँ नहीं गया. But that was so because हाँ मेरे यहाँ भी we've had. There's a couple people. Somebody was in the Air Force, somebody was in the Army, but for the large majority, nahi the. Matlab, there was no frame of reference for us to understand. And then, you meet some people, and like then I knew somebody who was in the band that I was. He joined the Army because his dad was in the Army, and they lived in Askari in Karachi. So unka jo full perspective, he was always going to join the Army.
He was always going to join the Army.
Yeah. So when do you join?
Okay, so it's a funny story actually. I've most of my life I've actually been away from my home in Karachi. I'm through and through Karachi, but just the first 10 years of my life I probably would have lived in Karachi.
Okay.
Rest I went to cadet school in Pakistan Steel Cadet College.
Okay.
And and then I came back for a little while as well. I studied in Khan for 2 years, and then I joined the military academy. And ever since then, I've just been posted out in Kashmir, Siachen, Western Border, Sialkot.
Okay. Okay.
The reason why I joined the army, in the cadet school, I was supposed to stay. People actually, finish up until they do their FSC, and then they leave, and then they, go to a professional college or wherever. But I left after the 10th grade. I was like, I can't, enough of this shit. I can't wear the uniform and, do the parade and all that shit. It was full on, man. And I used to be one of the delinquents, so I would always be on punishment. And it was just, I was like, no, this is it. And so then I joined Khan, and I had a wonderful 2 years, spent wonderful 2 years over there. And then but why I joined the army was one of my friends in Khan. He was a diehard, army fan, and he was really patriotic. Like, I mean, his house is one of those houses, that everyone knows in the vicinity. All right, it's their house. And so we used to live in North Nazabad at that point in time, and people would know the house was a landmark, basically. And the whole family was really patriotic. So he really wanted to join the army, and he knew that I had been in the cadet school. So he came to me. He was like, "Oh, you need to give me some pointers, man." And I told him, "No, dude, you have no idea what the fuck you're getting into. Don't do this shit."
Yeah.
All right. And he was like, no, I have to. Right. I have all this passion, and I just have to do something for the country. It's like, okay, fine.
What time period are we talking? Like,
that's 2007 and towards the middle of 2007.
Oh, matlab shit's kicked off in Pakistan.
Matlab,
scene shuru ho gaya. Acha, theek hai, right.
Yeah. So and so one of my friends in cadet school, he had actually already gotten in the army.
Okay.
And he was waiting just waiting. He wasn't even preparing for his FSC examinations at that point in time. He's like, oh, fuck that shit. I have to go do PMA now. So I took my friend from Khan to that friend in the cadet school, and they, sort of made friends, and, I introduced them. Like, he wants to go into the army. So we sort of showed him the assault course and all of the stuff that you basically do, the exercises and all that stuff, what kind of aptitude tests and all that jazz. So what happened was he sort of convinced me. At that point in time, I was going through a lot because my father was going through spinal surgery at that point. And I was spending a lot of time in the hospital, and there was a lot going on. I wanted to, that time I just wanted to go to LUMS or IBA and all that stuff. But there was no certainty at that point. Like I didn't know what was gonna happen,
Yeah.
and I was the eldest son as well, and I had two younger sisters. And at that point, we just didn't know because my father was very, very ill. He's alhamdulillah fine now.
Okay.
But there was a lot of uncertainty. So what my friend who wanted to join the army is like, why don't you try for it? I was like, no. And then he spent days and days convincing me, and I was like, okay, yeah, like this kind of makes sense. I'll have a secure future, and army is not all that bad, and it's not like I haven't tasted what it's like.
Sure.
I know what I would be getting into. So I went about and took the ISSBs with that friend. He actually took the ISSBs before me, and just a week after I took my ISSBs. And then what happened was that asshole, he didn't get in.
Oh shit.
And yeah, and then I got in, and I was like, and when the results came and everything, my dad had actually gotten out of the hospital. He was fine. And then I was just stuck in a dilemma whether, like, what do I do? I was waiting for results to come from other universities, and I had taken SATs as well. I had got like a 1700 score. So there were options open.
Right.
But at the same time, I didn't know that what I was going to get, because I didn't really prepare. I never used to prepare much for examination. So I would always be like, I don't know what's going to happen. But this was certain. This was, it was right in front of me that I had actually gotten in. And my dad was actually really proud because he took the ISSBs back in for the 56th long course, and 30 years ago. And he couldn't get in. He was like, oh, my son has been able to get into the ISSB. And I was like, oh, like my dad's respecting me for the first time in life. This shit must be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the friend, the patriotic friend, was his family army?
No, his family wasn't in the army as well. He was just
बस जोश था.
He was, बहुत ज़्यादा ही जोशीला था. Yeah.
अच्छा. So when you joined, when you got in, so you're saying your dad was happy. What was your family's general reaction? Were they like happy that you were going?
He was happy that I'd actually gotten in, but in the heart of his heart, he actually didn't want me to go, because then I would go away from the family. But at the same time, he had mixed feelings as well. So I just took a chance at that point. My mom didn't want me to go, but I don't know why. I've made it a point that I do the opposite of what my mom wants always. I don't know why.
So
maybe I should.
Yeah, because also wo hai na, like it's not like an academic sort of concern at that point where you're like, chalo, in peacetime, army join kar lo, Pakistan mein there's value in that experience or ye wo. But like in 2007, if you guys watching are too young to know, shit was getting real in Pakistan in 2007 in that period, because like
that was
the Musharraf era was over. I think
it was just ending. Just ending then. I had actually my first week in PMA was actually when Benazir got shot.
Wow.
As well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 2007. That's when she got shot. Yeah. I keep forgetting.
In December, I think it was December or November. Yeah, should have been December.
Yeah. No, I remember we did a thread on Twitter a while ago. Because that's one of those moments that's historically super relevant for Pakistan, and also recent enough that a lot of people were like around at that point. So I was like, what were you doing on that day? And like people remembered everything that was happening that day. Acha, but like going back to you clear the ISSB. Now what happens next? What's the process of getting in?
Oh, okay. So you first you take your initials, and initials is a series of tests actually. Okay. So that it goes on for like 4 or 5 days. So you have a series of aptitude tests and IQ tests, and then there's a physical test as well where you have to run a mile.
Right.
There's no time, but I don't think that there's a time in which you have to come in. But they just sort of if somebody does very bad, then they're like, okay,
like
but
if you're walking.
Nobody actually does. There are people who actually do. There are people who are actually not very fit for whatever reason. Maybe they have an ailment or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are some people who are not able to. But that's a very easy test. the initials. So
Right.
and then people who clear the initials, they get called for the ISSB. You have to go the ISSB centers around the country in Kohat and then Mali Kent and a couple of other stations as well. And so most of the Karachi's, obviously, they end up going to Malik and ISSB. You go there for 5 days, and all expenses paid. You stay over there, and again, you go through a series of tests, different psychological and mechanical aptitude and IQ oriented tests, and then there's you have to do an obstacle course in 2 minutes.
Okay.
The 2 minutes or 9 minutes, I'm not sure. I think it's 2 minutes. I forgot now. It's been a long time. So it's funny because what happened was you have to be able to do at least, I think, 50% of the obstacles in that time just to qualify, and nobody gets a rechance. So what I knew at that point was nobody gets a rechance to do the obstacles.
Right.
What happened with me was that you have to stand a certain way in the obstacle, and I had not prepared for the ISSB. I just went for shits and giggles, to be honest.
Right.
I was like, okay, my friend is going for the ISSB, and now I don't know why. I was 17, man. So there's like a tire over there where you have to stand inside a tire. Right, and that's your starting point, and then you start running and you do a series of obstacles, and then I stood in the tire the other way around, so I started from the end rather than starting from the beginning. तो क्या हुआ कि मैंने पहले ही obstacle जो था जो मैंने किया, I just got stuck on that obstacle, and 2 minutes I spent on that just one obstacle, obviously, and it didn't even clear that obstacle.
Right.
Obviously I had failed. Right. So the rest of the 3 days I just had fun, man. I just started, pestered a lot of people who were really into the ICB, and they were like, oh, there's people watching, and there used to be a chacha over there in our lines where we were staying, and he was just, there were rumors about him that he would go and tell the actual officers about whatever people were doing inside their dorms, and people were like scared, man. And I was like, I don't give a shit. So we would smoke and do whatever the hell we wanted at that time. But what happened the last day is so the general consensus is that whoever gets called for a re-interview, so you get interviewed by a colonel over there, and then so if you get called for a re-interview, then you have really high chances of getting in the army and clearing the ISSBs. So when I got in, my batch had about 150 or 200 people, and 8 people got called for the re-interview, right? And then they have like hundreds of batches like that. A lot of like hundreds of thousands of people actually take ISSBs. Yeah. So especially in Punjab, it's full on, man. Like everybody wants to get in the army. In Karachi, people don't give a shit. They're like, who gives a fuck, man? Yeah. So what happened was everyone was being called for like the re-interviews. There was this friend of mine who I made friends with at that time. He was the son of a brigadier, and he was like, "Oh, Johnny, sorry, yaar, tera re-interview ka nahi hua." Like, I koi scene nahi hai. Like, I wasn't really, wasn't really prepared to get in the army anyway. So that's all good. But then what happened was the chacha comes running, and he was like, "Oh, this officer is calling you," and he was the physical training officer, and he was like, "Oh, you have to take re-obstacles. You have to do the obstacles again."
Okay.
Like, oh, that's weird. And everyone's like, "Oh, what, re-obstacles?" And they didn't call me for a re-interview, so they wanted me to do the obstacles again. And
just
obviously, just me, yeah. Okay. And then I took the test again, and I actually did all the obstacles in 2 minutes at the time. And then obviously they sent the letter of recommendation to our house, and I was like, okay, fine, that's it.
So like, is there like, you still have an option to like say, "Chathi, I'm not interested" at this point? Like, what's the letter of recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely. So so basically, the ISSB recommends that this officer is ready to undergo a commissioned officer army training in PM Kakul for 2 years. so they're fit for service. So, and then once you get cleared, you have to go through a series of medical tests as well. And at that point, a lot of people get missed out as well, because there's a certain requirement. You have to be of a certain height. You have to be of, a certain BMI. You have to have, and a lot of other stuff. For some reason, they always end up doing DNS operations of everyone. I don't know why.
What's DNS operations?
So you have a nasal septum. So this bone is called your nasal septum, right?
Yeah.
So if it's deviated, that's called DNS,
deviated
naval septum. So
yeah.
they're like, oh no, we have to straighten up your nasal septum. A lot of people go through that operation. I didn't. He recommended me for an operation, and I was like, oh, I went to the other doctor, and I was like, oh, just look at my nose. It's just straight as fuck.
Right,
like, why do I need an operation?
Oh, that's curious.
And he was like, oh, he's fine. Yeah, it was just random.
Okay.
So yeah, and so I cleared the medicals, and then I got a letter again that 25th of November you have to report to PM Kakul, and this is the list of things that you need to have, your mess kit and all of that stuff. And and then my parents, they flew me to Islamabad. We stayed there with a family of ours, actually the same uncle where I tweeted from,
right.
that story. And then we made a road trip out of a weekend. Went there, and then they left me, and oh man, those 2 years.
So what's that like? Acha, what is your family like? What is their vibe? Because now it's real at this point, no? Because pehle to ye tha haan clear kar liya, acha abhi ye test hoga.
They were really proud, obviously. So like in Pakistan, if you get into the army, it doesn't matter. Like there is this sense of respect that you receive, and which is a good thing, I guess. I don't know. It gets to people's heads sometimes. But if you channel it in the right way, you can actually use it for the greater good as well. But a lot of people just don't. They're not able to fathom what sort of a blessing it actually is. But so they received a lot of that from the extended family, and people like, oh yeah, your son's going to the army, and they were like, oh yeah, this is this must be good. So they were all for it.
Okay.
And actually, funny thing, I actually got relegated in PMA. So my first term, I had to actually repeat it because very low GPA I think in first term. What happened was the training, like I had no idea what I was getting into. It was it was a roller coaster, right? And I would always be on punishment. It was the same as when I was in cadet school, because sometimes I would wear the nameplate a little crooked, and then you get restrictions, and then you get called for like 2, 3 in the morning, you get punished, and then you have to wake up because you're on punishment. You have to report at 4:30 in the morning to the GC office, the gentleman cadets office, at 4 in the morning. Everyone else wakes up at 6. You wake up at 4 because you have to shave as well. Because if you don't shave, and like you have to do proper shave, man. They take like a piece of paper, and then they sort of scuff it through on your face.
Yeah.
And if a sound comes like, then they're like, oh, saab aapne sahi shave nahi kiya, to aapki restrictions aur aayengi. Then it's like it's a wheel within a wheel, man. It just never fucking ends.
What about like हमारे जो मौलवी type community होती है who have like religious दाढ़ी, उनका क्या scene है? वो भी shave करेंगे?
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, I think there were very few people who actually kept beards. Otherwise, a lot of people. Most of them, they had to shave, and they did it actually as well, because they wanted to fit in. A lot of people want to fit in, and then which is good. That's what you want.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah,
that's the idea. But some people don't as well. In PMA, you call them Sufis, for whatever reason.
Yeah. Okay. So PMA mein, how did it seem like a flashback to your cadet college days? Like you're
absolutely
the same thing.
Absolutely. It was sort of an extension of that period, but it's just so much more, man. It was It was just because it was real. In PMA, you would in cadet school you could always go back to your house like over the
Mm.
weekends. Not over
Mm.
the weekends, but like every month, one weekend. I think you were able to go, if I remember correctly. But in PMA, if you especially if you're on punishment like me, you don't get to go home for like years, man. Like and if when you're on punishment, you're just a delinquent, and everyone knows. And the GC number had 786 at the end of it, so everyone knew it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even know where the punishment is coming from, and I would just have punishments coming from left, right, and center. We get a part one order after every day. So 1 p.m. you get a part one order. It gets stuck in your company line. So it's just the things that you have to go through.
Okay.
You have to do, like, the timings of the PT, or if there's something different going on other than the routine. And that's the performer basically that has your punishments of everyone in the company. And I passed out with like more than 160, I think 168 or something punishments. So 168 days of punishment. They
Wow.
were actually
Out of 2 years.
accrual. No. Out of the 2 years I'd been on punishment, there were very
Acha.
few days. All right, but when I was passing out, actually, I had an accrual punishment of
A-
168 days. So had I
accrual.
stayed in
Acha.
PMA, yeah, had I stayed in PMA, I would have had to go through 168 days of punishment. But
Wow.
thank fuck I passed out. um,
And
yeah.
what sort of things do you like? Is it like a university, college? Like, what's the structure of the PMA itself?
Yeah, PMA is. I don't know if you've seen in videos, or like you probably would have seen the passing out parades over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's PMA is it's huge, man. It's just magnificent. It's amazing. Colonial sort of buildings, and there used to be a Kent for British officers, and all the officers are from 1800s, early
Okay.
1800s. Over there, the officers' house is still same as well, and really big, and huge houses as well, because at that time you didn't have a problem of
Yeah, space.
lands
Yeah.
in space. So it's beautiful. And Ahmedabad is in Ahmedabad, so
Oh, right, right.
you have
Where
pine trees and maple trees over there. And when it rains and it snows, it's just amazing. And then you have uh, and it's sacred ground, and everyone in the army, PM is really sacred ground, especially except for the GC. So people who are actually going through training, but
mm,
when they pass out, their feelings change, obviously, because when they reminisce, they're like, oh no, this is the place where I spent all that time, even though it was really tough. But now when I reminisce it, it seems beautiful. um, except for the GCs, everyone holds the PMA ground really sacred. So you have a PMA road that sort of dissects the map of PMA in between, right? And it's a really long road. It's called Kakul Road, and
mm.
it's PMA road as well. Basically, it's a really long road. So you can't really walk leisurely on that road. So you have to either run or march on that road. And you can't be alone as well. You have to be in pairs. You have to be a group of people
Oh, right.
with it. So the reason why I'm telling you this is that there's these sort of rules everywhere around PMA. So you have to behave a certain way according to your surroundings. In company lines, how you have to stand in the PT ground, and how you have to stand in the drill ground, for instance, as well. So there are rules everywhere. That's what they actually instill in you: a hierarchy and rules and discipline, which, yeah, I'm like, in my experience, it really comes in handy,
Mm.
especially in the army. Like, obviously, if you don't, because you have to, it's not like corporate, which where I now work, like that. In my opinion, if you could do it that way,
Yeah, yeah,
so what
yeah.
do you think? And then I can always come back, oh no, but maybe you missed out on that. But in the army, you're like, oh no, you do this shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. This is
And
the
then you
way.
do it because, yes, yeah, this is the way to do it. When you obviously, when you spend some more time, and like, I was in operational area, people who were, which was actually beautiful, and I was pleasantly surprised that had happened when I actually I was in active battlefield. Even generals would take my word, because I was on the ground and they weren't. Obviously, they were in an ops room, just looking at the map. So I never experienced, do this, or you have to do
Right,
this.
right.
a
So there
couple of
is
times, but then
flexibility
if you
when it's
reason,
relevant.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but especially when you reason in a manner that it actually conveys your
Sure.
point. It's
Sure.
good.
So what happens
Yes.
after PMA? Then you pass out with 168 days accrued, and
Well, that was just me. I was an anomaly, man. Like
what's the
that was
next
just me.
step?
That was just me. So 2 years you spend in PMA. I actually spent 2.5 because I got relegated, so I had to
Sure.
go through the whole process again of the first term, which is just um, embarrassing, by the way. And uh, so after 2.5 years, you get allotted basically units. Our course had 400, about 350 odd cadets left by the end of it. So we started off with 500, 600, and then a lot of people leave the first week because when they find that, oh, you have to wake up at 4 in the morning, and you just don't get to sleep and you don't get to eat as well. If you
Mm.
would look like, man, it's if my family couldn't recognize me when I actually came back on leave because I had lost like 14, 15 kilos
Wow.
easily. Yeah, you don't. It's just like my ears were like this, and you don't have any hair, and you're
Right.
just really tanned, and it's just horrible. And because they don't feed you as well, you're not getting proper nutrition, and you're not sleeping. You know, so
Okay.
um, yeah, but after you pass out, basically towards the final time, you start getting a little bit of grace, and yeah, after towards the end, you get allotted with units. So the first 10 cadets, they're able to choose wherever they want to go. Other than that, it's just quota system. So for the first 50 would go into, there's this batch of units for the first 50 cadets, and then the second batch, and then the third batch. And then so the GHQ, basically the MS branch, they allot them the
Okay.
units. Yeah, so I ended up going in a Frontier Force unit, which I didn't want at all, but I had a ball of a time.
Okay.
The experiences that I had. So it was in infantry basically. I didn't
Mm.
want to go into the Premier. I was like, I would. So my first choice was going into the Signal Corps because, like, I was just do something in telecom and sit at the back and do the computer work.
Right.
But and my second option was, I think, armored,
Yeah.
and third was artillery or something, because you have to put two fighting arms in your choices. So yeah, I wanted to go in singles, but I didn't get any of the choices that I put in.
Yeah.
You know, at that point, Rahil Sharif was our commandant, right?
Yeah.
He was the commandant of PMA, and he knew me personally because I was
Oh.
in the dramatics over there, right?
Okay.
So I used to be the president of that club, and and they were really involved, and so a commandant would come and he knew me, and he was like, oh, I'm going to make sure that you go into FF, right, Frontier Force. And yeah, he he did make sure. And oh, man, I was like, what have I done? Like, why am I going into infantry? That week I didn't speak to anyone because I knew that if the war on terror is going on, there's no way. Like
Yeah. This is what
more than
2009.
75. Yeah, this is 2009,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
2010,
Right.
April, right? And more than 70% of your infantry is engaged in active warfare. I think there was some escalations going on towards the eastern border as well at that time.
Mm.
And yeah, it's like I am absolutely rogered from, if no matter what I do, I tried talking to everyone. My platoon commander is like, no, this is what it is. And then yeah, I was like, this okay, I just have to adapt.
Yeah.
So I just assumed the worst, and I was like, okay, like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but at least I can go with an open mind. But when I went there, some of the stuff that happened to me was sort of expected, but after some time had passed, you in infantry, I found that there's the band of brothers that you have, because you do everything together. It's very raw and earthy in nature, being in infantry, whereas in other arms, because the army is basically the infantry, right?
Mm. Mm.
Every other arm is basically a supporting arm to you.
Yeah.
But the infantry actually goes in and does what the army is supposed to do, and then when they call it, the army calls it, right? Everyone else supports the infantry in action. So when that happens, and most of the infantry is like your regular infantry, which is your standard infantry battalions. It's proper, like just कहते हैं ना फौज जो है मैदान में उतर आई है. That's how they actually go. They run towards the target and then they attack and all that stuff. So when you do that, so you have this really, you have a very strong connection with your men, and not just the officers, but with men as well, because you do everything together. And that I found, to be honest, when I was I was actually afraid of that when I was joining in the infantry, but that was the very thing that I fell in love with when I
afraid of what
actually experienced that. It's not very officer like. It's not you don't get to stay in an office and and do all the royal stuff that most of the public things that we do. But to be honest, it's nowhere in the army. That's just what we thought maybe it was going to be, but it wasn't. It was something else entirely, what I'd imagined. But it was amazing. The experience that I've had, it was it changes you a lot. Like it's not something ordinary that when you spend time in active battlefield and you go through what you go through, it's not something ordinary, and you can't really relate.
What was your first like live combat experience? Like what was that like time period for you?
So it was not right after I passed out, but I think I was 5-6 months after, maybe. Yeah, in 2010 I passed out, but in 2011 we were preparing to go, and in 2011 we actually did go to FATA, and my first experience was, to be honest, the first experience where I had to actually attack and go through all that. We didn't find any resistance, so that was maybe beginner's luck. But we were a part of a brigade, right? And they had other units as well. And so we had gotten the most difficult map because it's a funny story actually, which maybe I shouldn't tell right now.
I mean,
time. So we were actually sent as a punishment. Our unit was sent as a punishment to the operational area because of something that we had done, right? And and they would always send us to the most difficult terrain in the where there were intelligence reports of having a lot of Taliban there. They would always do that. So the first day, I still remember it like very clearly. It was in April, maybe 12th of April, I think, of 2011. And I was shit scared. I was just a lieutenant at that point, and I'm going to clear this valley, which is supposedly like it's infested with Taliban. And I was the QRF, so the quick reaction force commander. I was there I wanted to do well as well, but at the same time, this is something that I'd never experienced. Live ammunition and live rounds coming at you, and at any moment you can die. It just So you have to you have to really compartmentalize when you're in that situation. You have to have a compartment for fear, have a compartment for actually physically moving forward, because if you don't, you are short dead as well. And some things you have to keep on the back burner because you need your all in the moment. But a tiny lapse can get you or your men killed. So a lot is happening very quickly.
And how many people are you like responsible for at that time, at that point in that mission, for example?
So when I was when we went to the ops area, excuse me, I was actually the QRF commander. So my CO, because I was the youngest, in the field, and I was the quickest as well because I was the youngest and I was physically very fit. My CO was like, okay, you choose anyone you want out of the battalion, and you make a group of like 20 people, and they have to be really physically fit, and you need to be able to rely on them, because I'll be able to send you anywhere in the operation. So whenever I need something done, I will send you guys. You're the quick reaction force. And I had already it's funny, I chose all the delinquents in the
Right.
in the battalion as well. And if somebody had, some charges in police as well. Somebody was, and had eloped with somebody's daughter in FATA, all that, like, people like that. But I had experience, all these are the kind of people who
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
show you their mettle in the thick of it. And yeah, I think I bet on the right horse that time, because they came through, man. Every single time they came through. Most of them had already, participated in different competitions when we were in Salcode, but uh, yeah, so I knew what they were made of, and then I chose a group of, I think they were 18. Right, so a platoon has to have 36 soldiers in it, but they were like more like 20.
Okay.
So I always stayed as a QRF commander all through the tenure of Syria. We did a lot of operations. My CO would send us anywhere, and we came through every time, thankfully. And I only lost while I was there. We only lost one soldier throughout the 2.5 years.
At that point, like, what was your, so the first mission you said when you went, there was an expectation, terrain mushkil hai, you're expecting a lot of, like, enemy combatants
Yeah.
there, but turns out koi bhi nahi tha. That's the first time. The
Yeah,
first
that was
mission.
the first time. That was the
Okay.
first time, but that was just one day, right? And then we had to, keep on sort of moving forward in the map. And there was a very big area that we needed to clear, and some of the valleys in it's all very mountainous region, right? There are heaps of valleys over there, and different valleys had, like, some of the valleys, they were completely in control of the Taliban. They were they actually touched the Afghan border as well. Whatever that was at that point.
Yeah.
And they would have, supply routes coming through from Afghanistan and get sustained. So they had like a lot of ammunition in the Taliban over there. They had anti-aircraft capability as well. So it was full on, man. The first operation, we didn't experience anything, but there were a lot of other operations that happened afterwards, where obviously we experienced everything that you see in the movies. I was actually, the Salala incident when that happened. I don't know if you remember, like,
I
the
don't.
American fighters came. They were American fighters who actually mistook soldiers for Taliban, and then
Oh,
um,
okay.
yeah, and they bombed one of the posts. And that happened in 2011 as well, towards the end. I think that happened in November 2011, and that happened right in front of my eyes, actually, because where they bombed, I was the one who had actually cleared that ridge of terrorists, and then handed over to this different unit, who and one of the officers, a major, and 27 of them, and they were killed in action. Shahadat.
Wow.
That was just horrible, man. And there was just this bad taste in your mouth that's still there in
Yeah.
the army.
What was the vibe like at that point? Like, general, made a mistake, कि वो हो गया. Did people
Yeah, they
buy it? कि हाँ, it was a mistake, or did they think कि बकवास कर रहे हैं?
Yeah, so I know exactly what happened, because we were observing what's going on, right? We knew, because the aerial distance between where this happened, where they bombed, and where I was at that point, that must have been like 800 meters at max, and I was able to see everything. And I had this and the other officer with me as well, and we witnessed everything. And it's just because you never know, everything gets especially with NATO at that time, right? Everything happened. Everything. Oh, what's going to happen? We didn't know. So obviously there was some core shit that was happening over there, and they didn't tell our GHQ. Obviously, that's why they didn't tell us, and nobody knew what was going to happen. All the soldiers heard over there was firing going on in the valley, and whenever that happens, you have
Right.
to retaliate, right? And that's what they did. So when they retaliated, so they just did some aerial firing, and that happened towards the daytime. At 1 in the morning, the same day, right? The next day, 1 in the morning, uh, Americans came with their F-22s and their
Mm.
Cobras and Apaches, and they just bombed the shit out of that ridge. They bombed everything, and we didn't have an anti-aircraft capability, because who needs an anti-aircraft capability against the Taliban.
Yeah.
They don't have aircrafts,
Yeah.
right? So they were just sitting ducks,
And there
and
was
that's why it's
no
just
communication
that's why
between the sides at the time. So तुम्हें पता भी नहीं हो सकता
no,
था.
not at
They
all.
also wouldn't know.
We had no idea. I think, like, obviously there is speculation that the Americans knew and they did it
Sure.
anyway
Yeah.
because maybe some of them got hit in the aerial firing, but they didn't know that they thought that they were shooting at Taliban,
Right.
right?
Right.
And but that's all just speculation. Nobody
Sure.
really knows
Huh.
what really happened. So yeah, that was really that was really bad. And I think it's still sort of fresh in a lot of people that I know in the army. Still fresh in their minds. It'll take some time to go away, I guess.
Yeah, if it ever does, I guess, because like
Yeah,
वो वाली बात है ना, like I'm only speculating because I have no experience, but like if you're actively engaged with somebody who you consider an enemy, or उसमें somebody gets hit, yeah, ऐसा कुछ ठीक है, that's still within your frame of expectations. This could happen, but you don't
yeah,
expect like somebody who's
yeah,
theoretically not your enemy, miscommunication में लोग ज़ाया हो गए,
yeah.
that sort of thing,
Exactly.
no? How long do you stay in that zone, in that area, in FATA, so to speak?
2.5. So 2.5 years. Two and
Okay.
a half years I stayed over there, and yeah, it was I've seen a lot, man. Like in that area, I actually got a gallantry award as well for one of the operations that I did. It was this big plateau, right? It was this big mountain ridge that it was their stronghold of the Taliban, and they had more than like a 500 plus strength of people over there, and it was a self-sustaining sort of a ridge as well because they had a water source over there.
Achha.
And they had a big road coming from Afghanistan, so they could always just run away, and they had anti-aircraft capability over there on that ridge. So nobody for 10 years nobody had been able to take that ridge away from the Taliban, and they had made claims like, we will leave Islam if you're able to take this ridge away from us. Yeah, so a lot of times units tried. So again, when we started off, it wasn't actually our task to begin with. There was another other unit that was tasked to clear that ridge, and it was like they lost a lot of men. They tried like 5 times. Even SSG tried a couple of times, but one thing led to another. They weren't. Sometimes the operation wouldn't go as planned, and sometimes it was just they were sitting ducks. But so my CO, he came to me and another officer who had another. So we had 2 QRFs in our battalion, right? And our CO came to us and he was like, "Look, guys, it's everything. We've been tasked with everything else that even if things that other units are not able to do, we get tasked, and this is sort of the precedent now. So, and I know that the brigade commander is going to ask us to do this operation. So I just wanted to take your pulse. What do you think?" So he asked our company commanders, and they said, "This is not our operation at all. Like, what do you want us to do?" But we were young at that time. We're like, "Yes, sir, sir, we will do this." Volunteers. That's funny. I told my dad that I volunteered for this operation, and my CEO actually called my dad and he was like, "Oh, आपका बेटा बहुत बहादुर है, उसने जो है ना ये करने का किया." My dad called me and he's like, "तुम घर में मेरे नहीं आना, तुम मतलब तुम्हें जो है परवाह नहीं अपने घर वालों की कि जो है you're stupidly just trying to put your
be brave.
life in danger."
Yeah.
And so it was just but we did it anyway, and it was a very tough operation, but we were able to sort of it was in conjecture with the other units and SSG as well, but we were the first ones who actually got to the top and cleared it off, and then the SSG and other units came and then made a stronghold over there. So the chief came, then chief came over there as well on that ridge. It was Kiani at that time, and we were I and another officer,
मतलब इस level की बात हो गई थी.
It was
all the way up.
So that operation actually it gets taught in the staff college now. So it was one of the major operations in a 20-year history of operations. It's one of the biggest operations that we were able to do. So I'm really proud of that, obviously.
And
And
your QRF wali jo hai, that group of people, the platoon minus
yeah,
strength that you mentioned, does that stay? ek dafa ban gaya ye group, and these guys are doing missions now for the 2.5 years. It stays consistent.
no, obviously people go on leaves as well, and
Sure, but
there are promotions as well. All
acha,
right, so some of them, yeah. So if maybe some of the sepoys, they got promoted to a lance naik, which is a private, right? So they would probably go and do some other duty. So there
okay,
were changes, but not a lot. Mostly like 75% of them would have stayed the same
right.
throughout the 10 year.
You don't get like disbanded and then absorbed into other wo us tarah
Oh
se.
no. So
Right.
things roll on, man. In the army, there's the saying that even if the CO dies, even if every officer dies, the army unit would still be able to run because everyone knows what to do in what situation. That's how you exercise. That's what you
Hmm.
practice.
Hmm.
That's what we do day in day out. In the event of a war, if the enemy comes from there, we'll do this. If they come from there, what's the
That's
most
why
dangerous approach?
the order follow karne wala discipline wala structure is also
Exactly.
like drilled in so
Exactly.
that yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everyone knows what to do, and it's sort of like in your muscle memory and your reflex because you do it so often. Yeah,
So
that
when
sort of
you
makes
do the ye wala operation, it's a good thing that you mentioned. It's a like a coincidence. You mentioned now it's stored. One of the things that I when I would read about like the 80s Wali war and the experience, because you see, if you're exposed to like Western news media, so now there's a lot of like people with military experience in these zones, bata rahe
Mhm.
hain ki what things went wrong or what were the assumptions that turned out to be completely outside of the fact. So
Mhm.
when your training is ongoing now, when you start in like 2007-ish, war and terror ka thoda bahut scene chal raha hai and Pakistan ki bhi involvement hai.
Mhm.
But before that, I suppose the conventional, you only train for the previous war because that's all the information you
Oh yeah,
have.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now you're fighting these people, shalwar kameez or chappalon mein,
yeah,
who are hiding in mountains, and
exactly.
still they're good. Like that was the
Mhm.
thing when the Soviets went to
Yeah,
Afghanistan. They're
Iska,
like,
I'll tell you exactly what. So you were absolutely spot on that we get trained for conventional warfare.
yeah,
So there's a salt line, there's a
yeah,
BOF, a base of fire, all right, and there's a D-Day, and then there's an HR, there's a
yeah.
header, and your artillery is over there, your armored comes from there, infantry goes in this direction. This is your
Ah,
most dangerous approach, all that stuff. But this is a whole new game.
yeah.
This is entirely different. It's low intensity conflict, right? Guerrilla warfare, and these people, in the Taliban and all their offshoots, they are crazy. They're the kings of the. They've actually invented
Mm, mm.
almost guerrilla warfare. They're in minor tactics. So this is all minor tactics, right? How you actually appreciate the ground and how actually use the ground to your advantage. It's just minor tactics, and they are just they have amazing skills in this regard because obviously they're from the area as well. They're very because of poverty, and they actually live in. They're really connected to the earth
Right.
and the environment. All right, they know where everything is.
Yeah.
So their spatial IQ is much better than your everyday uh, Karachi.
Yeah, you're from
you know,
Karachi. Like,
but
it's not
yeah,
even ke
yeah,
you Ahmedabad mein grew up or something.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So this is all. You have a different, completely different culture. So they're really good in minor tactics. So you have to adapt to the scenario, to the environment, and you have to learn. And you have to learn very quickly
Yeah,
once you're
yeah.
dead.
Because, way I can imagine, because like that's perhaps also why I don't know. I mean, I'm just talking out of my ass again. But like you said that the QRF was like all these guys, who were perhaps not held in the highest esteem us waqt, but they all you felt and you also were the sort of person ki, when the shit goes
Yeah,
down, they'll manage kuch na kuch ho jayega. And you need that adaptability for like what is theoretically a new environment. which you don't have like years of experience for? Is that anywhere close to the mark?
Yeah, I think that's where your training in leadership comes in handy, I guess. That's what my PMA training, now, when I in retrospect,
Hmm.
when I look back, this is, and it comes, like, I can feel it, like, metacognitively. I'm aware of, the decisions that I take, and, the actions that I do, and I know that, this is where it's coming from, in physiologically and, mentally as well. But there's the story behind it, and,
Yeah.
it always, more often than not, I find myself, going back to, my PMA days, how I was dealt with different situations, and how I adapted to, ever-changing circumstances. And
Hmm.
that's what happened when I was in the operational area as well. That because when you, like, I guess the reason why I was a delinquent in the army, and when I was in actually PMA, and you sort of meet with this similar sort of people, right, who really, you really don't give a fuck about, discipline
Hmm.
much, or
Hmm.
hierarchy, and authority. uh, and they're young, right? And there's a lot of hormones going on. There's a lot of testosterone, and a lot
Yeah.
of, you know, so that you can actually rely. So I knew I can rely on those sort of people, like, because if push came to shove, they're not going to show me a fucking book like, oh no, we have to do this, by the way.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh no, we got your back,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. So those were the sort of people, and I knew, and that it come, and that it,
Hmm.
come through.
And also, so you mentioned that you're CEO and you tell your dad that you guys are going for this operation. Again, I'm just heading back to that point, like the family ka concern level, respect वगैरह सब अपनी जगह है, but you were joined doing the ISSB, fine, now you're in PMA, fine. All of this at this point is like a theoretical educational exercise, but now you're
Yeah.
like in the shit.
Now,
So
yeah.
their level of, like, for them also it's real now कि हमारा only beta, eldest son, etc., etc., he's
I
like,
guess, nah, not really, because they weren't there, and
okay,
it's like, no, it's not something that's easily fathomable
okay.
to the layman, right? Now that I'm actually sharing my experience with you, maybe you can, visualize, right? But to actually be there, and obviously, because you're from the newer generation, and you can actually, and you've seen a lot of movies too, right? The previous so you can actually relate and sort of,
Yeah,
assimilate, the incoming information with the information that you've already had in
yeah.
your mind. But my folks, they didn't see any movies like that, so they didn't know anything about the low intensity conflict, or movies like Sniper and Shooter and
Mm-hmm.
all that jazz. Because we know now that, what happens in Afghanistan on some level. These are the kind of houses that you have, and these are the kind of, hideouts.
Yeah,
And this is what, very there's generalization, obviously, in stereotypical sense,
yeah.
but there's some truth to, there's a bit of truth everywhere, so you can sort of, make sense here. Okay, you're over. But my parents couldn't. It's hud tak nahi. But after the operation was done, and then my so the chief called to congratulate a unit, and then my CO and the brigade commanders, they called everywhere. I was actually, that was the first time after 8 months that I'd been able to go to home. And
Mm.
then but since the chief was coming, my CO actually sent an airplane, right, to get me. He flew me to the Snawad airport, and then from then on, we got onto a chopper, and went to that ridge that we'd cleared earlier. So yeah, then they realize, all right, oh, what's going on?
Mm.
What's, like, okay, maybe you have done something, you know
No, but also
stupid.
I meant also in terms of like stress level, like concern levels. Was that
We had
like in your communication with your parents? Were they like just
there was no
stressed?
communication, so no news
Acha,
was good news.
acha.
So we didn't have phones and stuff. There was this WePTCL service, or WeTech, I don't know. We had those Huawei sets in,
Okay.
there was this other brand as well. It's still fresh in the memory. We would, I remember, because uh, after we'd clear the posts and stuff, I was an officer, so I had a phone set. and we would get internet signals from like 1 in the morning to like 3 in the morning. They were very slow, back in the early 2000 days, your dial-up connection, that kind of internet, even worse than that, to be honest. But that was the only entertainment. I remember when so we had the first 6 months, we had one laptop with us, right? And it had this one song, Bruno Mars Grenade.
Wow, ironic.
That one song, and we had this one song, and there was a couple of officers there who were like, who were not really, there wasn't much difference between us, and we would just, at night, we would, just turn on a torch and listen to that song. And we hated that song, and then we loved it again, then we hated it again, and it's this, we just have mixed. Every time this song comes on, I'm back there, like
Yeah.
I'm fully there.
The first time you go back after this, like you go back to like Karachi for a holiday, does everything seem different? Because you're different.
How do you mean? Like I don't understand.
In terms of like, there's like a regular life that somebody lives, in your family with friends, whatever. Now you've had this crazy experience of combat and stuff, shit getting real.
Yeah.
And nobody else you meet will be able to relate to what has happened, right? And it's great that you did well, sab kuch acha ho gaya, hopefully losses were as minimal as possible, but now you're back and like you see people. Is that contrast more noticeable to you at that point or ever?
Yeah, at that point, yeah, you're right. Obviously, when it's really fresh in your memory, and it's still sometimes, I had to actually unlearn that I need to. I would actually, see everyone through just one scope, and they were like, okay, this person, he doesn't know what he's talking about because he hasn't been in that situation. I was actually like that. Then I actually actively unlearn and that, because I realized that I'm just pushing people away like that, and I'm not learning anything new at all, and
Right.
everyone has so much else to offer, and just because I've had this experience doesn't mean that people haven't had more important if not experiences in their lives, and there's just so much to learn. It's sort of like, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just blaming men, all men, for that. That it's sort of, it's in the nature of man, I guess. That when you accomplish something, you sort of feel like, okay, I'm all the shit.
Yeah, दुनिया बस.
बस ये वो मुझे ही पता है बस.
Right.
Lekin
right.
I'm really glad that I actually came out of it much quicker than than what I see other people.
Yeah.
In similar sort of situations.
Hmm.
And now I actually hate that. Like I actually hate being in that position, or seeing other people, other soldiers, other officers, who do that to other people, because that's how you lose all the connection. That's how.
Yeah.
Now like maybe 5 years ago I probably wouldn't like, well, who's this guy, but now now I've realized this is this great guy, and he's doing all that. He's actually taking all this in a very raw way. He's to the masses. He's sharing all these stories.
नहीं अच्छा. I will accept all compliments. What
No,
happens?
yeah.
What happens after then? You spent 2.5 years in that FATA region. You mentioned you've been to Siachen as well. So you come back to Karachi. Operation ho gaya. You get the chief वगैरह वाला incident होता है, सब कुछ होता है. What's next?
Yeah, so 2.5 years I spent in FATA, and then we came back and we spent some more time in I think in Sialkot it was, and that was the highlight period when that's when elections were going on, and and we were really close to Lahore, so we had some good times for just 6 months,
right?
And and after 6 months we had just had to back up and go to Siachen, where we stayed for another 2.5 years. So I stayed all of that time in Siachen, and believe you me, I thought that after FATA that's the end. That's nothing is going to get worse than this. But when I went to Siachen, I was like, fucking hell, man. It was horrible. That's the epitome of, misery that
Yeah.
fucking, I don't know why we have and Indians have soldiers over there. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no logic. It's just people are just dying for no reason over
Mm.
there. And it's just horrible.
What's
It's
the
a
I
horrible
think
place.
a lot of
It's very
people na
depressing.
Pakistan mein
Mm.
we know कि सियाचिन पे हमारे नौजवान लड़ रहे हैं and stuff like that, and it's in the mountains and it's a glacier, but I'm sure there's a lot of like small things that just living in that space, apart from even the conflict thing, that people
Mm.
just can't imagine. So would you mind like describing udhar ki situation kya thi?
Yeah, no problems. Siachen mein basically, I don't know if you know, like, so back in the 80s, Indian Army came all the way to Skardu, and then we
Mm-hmm.
had to, make our soldiers run from Lahore, and Lahore ki sardi ki jo hai pullover wali usme wo Siachen mein aage gए थे, where temperature goes down to -70. Where I was, it was -60,
70.
-70. Yeah, bro, it's just
Wow.
horrible. It's horrible. Like K2 was right there. We
Wow.
have a post. We have a post. Obviously, I'm not going to name the post. We have a post
Sure.
which is a very famous post,
Huh.
and it's the closest one to K2 as well. It's in one of the sectors in Siachen. I wasn't in that sector, but I was the sector where I was. I could see exactly where, but it was really close by. And at 22,000 feet, I was posted. It was just, I think it's 13,000 feet or 12,000, where after which there's no vegetation, right? And
Right.
then there
Yeah,
are
yeah,
no
yeah.
like
The
there are
tree
no
line
birds.
ends.
There's nothing. The
Hmm.
tree line ends, and then after if you climb a little further up, and then you lose the sight of birds and eagles and as well. There's no over
Yeah.
there where we are. There's no other living thing
You're the only
other than
people.
human beings. We are the only people,
Yeah.
and it's just it's so depressing, man. Like we get food, like we get meat uh, as well over there. It just gets burned within a week. It just sort of shrinks and
Oh,
it
like freeze
acquires this
burn.
weird shape. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and it's just tastes horrible as well. You can't have meat over there. Plus, your hemoglobin and your white blood cell count shoots through the roof, because your body's trying to, because the air is thin and there's less oxygen, right?
Right.
So your body tries to make up by making more endorphins and neutrophils and the white blood cells, so that
Okay.
it's able to get more oxygen from the environment, basically. So that's how your body tries to make up for the lack of oxygen over there. And everything is just, your heart is beating faster than usual. Imagine for like 6 months, because you can't move, even though you're just lying down. It's just you can't go and take a shit normally over there. You have to sometimes this is just real shit that needs to be talked
Uh-huh.
about. There's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
many problems that people don't go. They're not able to go to the bathroom, just to the toilet, just for a week, because there's a blizzard going on.
Oh shit. Acha.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So you have to, and there's so many
Like at
problems
that
over there.
point,
So
like the conflict aspect is like not even the biggest
oh
problem.
no, oh not at all, man. And even for those soldiers as well, there's a period called the no move period, right? And so we just have radio communication, and the Indians have radio communication from their headquarters, and yeah, but there's no like physical communication. So there are no parties, like parties of comprising of men going to headquarters, or
Acha.
parties coming from the headquarters to the post. So the dumping gets done in the other period. So in the move period, where you're able to move. So they dump all the ration and all the
Oh, like the
goods
supplies.
there.
Right.
Yeah, so all the supplies, and for let's say 4 or 5 months, and then the rest of the 7 or 8 months, you're not able to move, and therefore you obviously use the ration. So in the no move period, so there are a lot of posts in that region where the Indian post is just like 300 meters away,
Right.
right? So you see them and they see you, and when there's no move, they would ask for cigarettes and stuff, or dal, or whatever,
Yeah,
and
because at that point
thing.
you're just
So
like people.
at that point, you just need to survive, man, and you
Yeah.
just need to, it's just about going through that day at one point
Mm,
in time, one day at a
mm.
time. Yeah. So I don't understand why we need to. Obviously, there are problems with the all the rivers and stuff
Yeah.
in India. the water problems and stuff. But still, like, this shit needs to get resolved. Everything else, I understand. There's some, maybe there's an iota of, logic you can find. All right, LOC, and the Western
Yeah.
borders and stuff. I'm now a pacifist, by the way. Like,
Okay.
believe it or not. I don't like war. I don't propon war at all. I think this dialogue is everything.
Was that
And
different
there
to
are
who
other
you
ways.
were at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was a different person back then, and I needed to be that person in order to
Sure.
survive.
Yeah.
I would probably still go in that mode if given in the right circumstance. But now this is my reality, and I don't see any point in bloodshed. Obviously, you have to be able to defend yourself when it's entrusted upon you, and when it's
Yeah.
shoved in your face. But like,
But
not,
best to
and
never
that's
get to there.
yeah, exactly. And and avoid it as much as you can, which I think is our strategy as a country at this point in time, and I'm glad that it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, and more often than not, it's been that way for a very long time now. Maybe not during the '60s and stuff, but now, it's the new
Whoa.
world order.
How long do you stay in Siachen?
About 2.5, 3 years almost.
What? Acha.
Yeah, because so there's one of the benefits of being in the infantry as well. So every other officer, they from the other arms, they come for like 6 months, and
Okay.
then they go, then they just pass all that time, stay in one of the posts, and then they just leave. Whereas infantry officers, the whole battalion actually moves there, and you
You're
have to
all
be there.
there. Huh.
We're all there for all that time.
Is the weather better in the summer? Like, is it less horrible? Yeah, usme bhi bas barely.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Obviously, yeah, it's the temperature drops uh, sometimes, but you never know when a blizzard is going to come. You sometimes you get the sun, but then again, there's every time you go out, you put yourself at risk of
Hmm.
getting a cerebral edema or a pulmonary edema
Right.
over there. Water gets filled into your lungs or
Right.
in your brain, just because it's so fucking cold over there. Just exposing your body over there and not maybe wearing the cap in a wrong fashion, or not being taking out a cigarette just to light up a cigarette, and you take your glove out for a little
Right.
while, and you find that it's fine, but then suddenly you get this tingling feeling, and then your
Frostbite.
hands start.
Yeah.
By the time you put your gloves back, it's already it started doing its magic on you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and two
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
later you see your fingers are getting black, and then you
Mm.
have to be evacuated.
And you, I'm assuming you saw that happening left, right,
Yeah,
center.
a lot of the times.
Mm.
And yeah, there were landslides as well. So the landslides were one of the biggest problems over there. Just exposure to cold and landslides.
Was
Lots of
there
landslides.
was there like at that 2.5 period of time, was there any serious interactions, combat at that period? Yeah, the weather was enough of a problem.
No, no. So there was no. We didn't. To be honest, we didn't get any operation. We didn't go into
Okay.
operational mode over there. Yeah, it was ceasefire
Hmm.
all that period that we was there. Yeah. So it wasn't that much of a problem. But like I said, I found it much worse than being in the operational area where there was no fire, because it's just mentally really challenging over
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
because you're alone, right? And it's no matter how hard you try, there is this gap with your men and yourself, because how there is a very like distinct difference in like the kind of stuff that you would talk about probably,
Right.
and
Life
what
experience.
the soldier would talk about, life experience.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, you can have shared experience to an extent, but after some time you'll be like, okay, no, I need to like be able to move forward, but you don't, and that's really frustrating. Like sometimes you can be, when you're in different social situations, you can be like, okay, well, in a couple of hours I'll go back and do whatever the fuck I was doing
Right.
before.
Right.
But now you're just stuck there for 8, 9 months. All right, you gotta adapt, man.
Right. So is
Yeah,
this
but
after
it's
after
frustrating.
this? Is this when you go back to, you mentioned you went to Islamabad and then you Twitter where you were like, you tweet out something about the experience or
That was
something?
yeah. I'm not. That actually happened. I don't remember when that was. Yeah, 2015. Yeah, yeah. That was after Siachen. Yeah, that was when I actually So after Siachen, I decided like this is all right. This is not working out for me now because it's just been crazy. Like I'd been in the western eastern borders, and that was all the army was about. And I needed something. I needed to be able to move forward mentally, like, and I needed a mental challenge. And I didn't really find it was all physical, but I couldn't find anything. It was just me, to be honest. I just needed to get out of that environment.
Right.
And then I tried really hard, and it was really difficult for me to get out of the army. But at the end of the day,
Yeah, how do you leave? Can you just say, "Acha bas ho gaya, main ja raha
no,
hu."
no, not at all.
Right.
Actually, they actually accepted my resignation on the fourth try, and that try out, actually I went to the GHQ and I actually spoke to the general who was, and I told him, please, that just, you need to hear my story, and this is what I've been through, and this is like I don't even know why I need to tell you this, but we should just accept my resignation anyway, like, hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but I told him anyway that, I just it's just not working out. My heart's not in it anymore, and I feel that it's not going to be fair on the profession or on me. Felt that I'm not, up till this point in time, I've done everything the army asked me to do, and much more, and that's why I have this gallantry award as well, and all these letter of commendations and all that stuff. But now that I actually need to, because my mentally, it was just, I couldn't bear it anymore at that time. It's just, maybe I'm a really sensitive person by nature as well. I feel a
Okay.
lot, like I absorb a lot, I think. I feel, and sometimes you need to be able to shut that as well. So even though I did very well in the army, I would still take back a lot with me, back home, and I would think and ponder over it, when I would be alone. Siachen was the time when I actually, there was nothing else to do, and except thinking. Right, man, I read a lot of books over there. Quran मैंने पूरा पढ़ लिया, उसकी तफसीर मैंने पढ़ ली. उसके बाद मैं कहा क्या, मैं, like, what do I do? Like, there's nothing else to
Right.
do.
Right.
And yeah, so it's sometimes you go to a dark place, and
Do you think it was
they
Siachen
can
that
hear it.
really cemented your decision? Like, yeah, this is not for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was Siachen. It was not the operational area. I had a good time. I made some really good friends over there, in the FATA. Beautiful people. It's just sad that what it went through, and thank God that, the army actually came in, and now it's much better. I mean, you couldn't imagine going to FATA before, but when we were there, and now, like, people have businesses over there, and they have truck companies, and everything is just back to normal,
Right.
which is a great achievement, because you couldn't imagine doing that, back in, at that point in time, but now you can, which is amazing.
It's weird. Khair, we'll come to this, but then you leave TK in 2015 is when you finally.
2016,
Acha.
towards the end of 2016. So I almost spent like 10 years in the army,
Okay.
including the
Okay.
training. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What happens then? You come home.
Oh yeah.
Where's your
So
life?
after leaving the army.
Yeah, like where's your life like
So
going?
after
What's
leaving the
the
army,
yeah.
yeah, after leaving the army, I was like, so you know what? I was like, I just need to, go out of this place and start anew where I don't know any people. I just
Okay.
wanted to, not be. I wasn't in in sort of that position mentally where I would want familiar faces. I just wanted to get
Acha.
away.
Acha.
And then, so me and my wife decided to move to, basically, Australia, where we
Had
had
you
no
been
one
married at that point
that we knew.
already?
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
Okay.
I was. So I actually got married pretty young. When I was 22. I was in FATA at that time when I got
Wow.
married. I was like, oh, this is it. I don't know whether I'm gonna make it back out alive or not.
Yeah.
So let's just do this. But yeah, it's good.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we decided to just come to Australia, and now here we are.
And so then that's like a big change for you then. Like it's
Oh,
not just
absolutely, man.
you come from like the army to regular life. You're like you move all the way out to like a different
Yeah, but
culture, a different everything.
I think that's how it's been all through my life.
Okay.
When I went to cadet school, and it was completely different, and then I went to Aachen, it was like a different world, and then you go to PMA, it's completely different, and then war in FATA and Siachen. And now here we are. This is like easy. This is easy stuff, man.
Sure.
Like,
I can imagine. You mentioned also when we were talking Instagram pay, you mentioned ke, the stuff that people like obviously now with the Western Wali angle ke, their soldiers, they went there, war on terror, mission, whatever. But now lots of people are coming back and there's stories of how they integrate into society and successfully, unsuccessfully, things like PTSD, इस तरह की
yeah.
बड़ी फिल्में बन रही हैं पूरी पूरी. Um,
Mhm.
but that I don't think I've ever really heard that as a narrative in Pakistan. Jabke, there was like at least a straight 10-15 year period jahan at some point there was some shit going down. Up here, things might get started again. I don't know, maybe it's like talking about it seems like weakness. I could very easily imagine that being the case ke nahi bro kya mujhe ko fak thodi hum daler hain hum ye hain wo hain. Or maybe there's just no understanding of this idea um in as much detail as you're comfortable with. Was this like something you faced personally as well?
Yeah, I think on some level, because there's such an immense change in your circumstance and in your surroundings, the
Hmm.
stimulus that you are getting is so different than what you're used to.
Hmm.
I don't believe that anyone, will be able to say that they were not affected by it in
Right.
whatever way.
Right.
There can be positive ways as well. Some people, it's sort of. I always felt the kind of guy that I was, that I thought I was, that that would be, that's my home. It's going to be my home territory, and this is what I'm all about, and
Where? Australia?
no, in the army, in the
The army.
operational area.
Okay. Right. Right. Right.
But when I actually went there and I saw all that misery, I was had a completely different view of what was going on in the world. And that it came to a point that I actually started empathizing with the terrorists as well, who were captured. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is where this guy is coming from. And that was really important for me to understand. And actually, because I would question everything. When I started off, I didn't question anything. I was just like, okay, no, this is what we've been ordered to do, and let's just do this. But when I went there, and they were obviously that area had civilians in it as well. They were mixed with terrorists, so you had to be really careful. It's a very very delicate sort of a situation
Hmm.
then, to be able to distinguish between a friend and a foe at that time, because you don't want that on your conscience to mistakenly hurt somebody who didn't deserve to be
Hmm.
hurt. So, and at the same time, like, if you take any laxity in your safety, you can get killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put your guard down and then you get shot in the head. It was a really, so you had to keep your wits about every time. You couldn't, like, I would always sleep with a weapon. I would sleep with my shoes on for 2 years straight, like, and you always be there. And I would always lead from the front as well, because if you don't, you sure shot. There's no way your men are going to stay with you if you don't lead from the front. And we've experienced that. Like, there are going to be heaps of experience in everywhere, not just in Pakistan. If you don't,
Hmm.
and there are
Yeah.
all kinds of officers and all kinds of people are there in all the armies. You'll get stories of bravado, and stories where cowardice as well.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination. The reason why it's not apparent, any mental sort of disorders, in psychological disorders, in our army, it doesn't really get talked about much. It's a number of factors. So one is, obviously, you said that it's not it's sort of still we're in that sort of state that it's not something unmanly to talk about, or they come from that background where it's not considered, it comes from the family sometimes as well. Or it's considered a taboo that, oh, tu pagal hai yaar. This,
Hmm.
every time you talk about mental issues,
Pagal.
the people start thinking that
Yeah, that's the
to
step. Yeah.
pare ho gaya hai, bilkul. So which is not the case, like, in Australia. I think everyone should go do a psychologist, just to assess, just to sort of analyze yourself.
Yeah.
Well, it helps you a lot. So a lot of the reasons, but one of the main reasons why I think, and because still statistically, there should have been a lot of issues. Like, there are no suicide cases, because
Right.
that's when that's when it comes to it becomes apparent. If there are suicide cases, they don't get, you can't hide those,
Yeah.
right? So you know, so and if the suicide rate is high in an army, which obviously with the kind of situations that they're in, it's abnormally higher than the rest of the civilians. But if you compare the armies, the Pakistan Army's suicide rate is very, very low. And I was actually really intrigued by why this is, because it affected me mentally as well. I was sure that it affects other people, and obviously I have friends there, and they spoke about it as well, and it had affected them as well. But why it did not deteriorate in a way, for lack of a better word, I guess. So just my example would be, I would, every time I would take an operation in the take an action in the operation later, when I was in the operation, I would really think about whether I'm doing, that thing 4 or 5 times, whether whatever I'm doing is right, is this thing that I stand for or not. And there were instances where you get or do some stuff, and I flatly refuse no. All right, and it just gives you all the more power, to be honest, when you say no in the army, and then when you're able to justify that as well. And now when all this time has passed, and and when you look back in retrospect, you realize that, oh, thank fuck that I made that decision. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it would have been a different story. And that person who was giving you the order at that time, and they are thankful that you said no to them at that point, because it was a different ball game going on in the past. And now here we are, and yeah. So it's just the decisions that you have to take in the moment. But also, I think there was, I think so. One of the main reasons why is, I think, purpose. There was this study done in Brazil, I think. So yeah, so they had one of the national birds, I think the cacao parrot or something. It was going extinct, and they tried everything, but it just didn't work. So they hired a guy from America, and he came in, and he basically did a survey, and they were like, you have 3 months, and you have to say about this is we cherish this bird, and you have to bring about some changes where we are able to basically save the bird. And he did a series of experiments, and basically what he did was he brought people together, and in a way that he ran campaigns of, oh, this is your national bird. Nobody even knew that it was their national bird. So he told them that this is what you spell. This is what Brazil stands for, and this is what we are all about. He actually was able to print the photo of that bird in the postcards, and the stamps as well. And so people actually really started associating themselves with that purpose of that. Okay, this is who we are. And especially when you're comparing the American bald eagle versus that beautiful parrot, right? So you have that sort of contrast as well. So what he found after the experiment was that basically, that when you bring people together and give them a purpose, and grow your people as well, you are able to achieve things that weren't really possible before. In the army, what we sell, so all the other armies, it's like, okay, you come here, you must have heard, like in movies, oh, I did 2 tours in Afghanistan, or 4 tours. It's not, we don't do tours. We just do, like, we go into the army, we stay there, 30 years, and then we retire. The reason is why, because the overarching theme of the army is कि हम जो है पाकिस्तान एक मुसलमान मुल्क है, और हम उसकी जो है आर्मी है, and this is our purpose basically, and the army, हम अल्लाह की आर्मी है, and that is the purpose that is basically, I don't know whether it's right or wrong. That's not for me to decide.
Right.
I would have my my views on it, but this is the main theme that brings everyone together, and to be honest, like, it's beautiful in a way that you don't find. I was in a, like, I am from Shia background, right? And I'm a Karachiite. Okay, my my family is from India with Iranian roots and all that, so I'm a complete outsider, all right, in the minority. But I spend time in a Pathan unit. Like, it is a Pathan unit, right? And everyone, it doesn't matter whether you are a Shia or a Sunni or a Punjabi or a Pathan, people are praying in the same mosque. Somebody has their hands open, and somebody is hands closed. it's nobody is gives a fuck what you're
Mm.
doing as
Mm.
long as you're wearing the same uniform, and that is beautiful. And because everyone has the same purpose, everyone has they know, okay, this is what we stand for. Pakistan comes first before everything else, and that's what unifies them, I guess. And it's that nationalism plus that deen ka or Islam ka
Right,
jo upar
right.
se overarching wo hai, uski wajah se it just sort of strengthens that. And like, I'm a Muslim as well, and I like to think that I'm a religious person, but not probably if not in a contemporary sort of
Yeah,
way maybe,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like, I like to think like, and I like to become better as well. And I think this is beautiful. This is the that it just brings everyone together. It's with the Pakistan army, especially when
Mm.
when you compare it to the rest of the Pakistan, where there's so many divides, and there's a wheel within a wheel. अगर कोई जो है चौधरी है तो तू वराई है, पंजाबी हैं हालांकि दोनों,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or and you similarly in different, in Kashmir में कश्मीरी बट है और वो कश्मीरी जो है
Right, right.
पलंदरी का है, एक बलोच है तो एक जो है कश्मीर का है, और एक मतलब इस तरह के there's people just focus on the differences in Pakistan. This is what I've noticed everywhere, wherever I've gone in Pakistan. It's the same thing. Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. Yeah, this is what we do. But in the army, obviously, like banter to chalta hi hai, but when push comes to shove, people have got your back over
Right.
there. It doesn't matter where you're from, how you look like, or whatever you do in your own private time.
Mm.
But till the time you're wearing the uniform and
There's one
you're doing the same,
purpose.
there's just one purpose, and
Yeah.
this is, yeah. And it's, and even yeah, everyone that I've shared my experiences of her or heard their experiences, this is the same thing that which has been a constant, that oh yaar humne to ye kiya na, matlab ye kyun ke, because we stand for Islam, and there is no sort of, we can't sort of there's injustice in the society, and since we have the power to, and we are an army, and we have a hierarchy, so it's whatever we do is it's for God, basically. That's the
Mm.
underarching sort of crusade-ish sort of situation there.
Mm.
This I think is the main reason why we have such a low suicide rate. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
like if you go
suicide
to,
though वैसे भी like in all over the world and societies everywhere. There's like there can be lots and lots of cases and causes and
yeah,
contributing factors वगैरह. But in
but I
obviously
think,
the huh.
but I think, like, it's a blessing, like all the other blessing that Pakistan has. That's why we are we still exist. It's a blessing that we don't have any such issues in the army. But I
Mm.
think we're still not handling it the right way in the army. I think there's a lack of awareness in contemporary, psychology, basically what's going on in the rest of the world, and how we deal with
Yeah,
our soldiers. But at the same time, I think the reason why they don't let it to be that way is because we don't there's no need to at
it's
this
not a
point in
pressing
time.
issue. Yeah.
It's not a pressing issue, and you can focus elsewhere.
And I feel
But
also
at the
there's
same time,
probably with like mental health issues now, uh, providing information where there is ignorance, there's probably like also a fear ke, if we introduce this concept, who knows फिर कितने case निकल आए, अभी चल रहा है,
exactly,
it's good,
fear of the unknown, basically.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
mental
think
health.
also वो वाली बात, there was very I was thinking of this when you were mentioning कि you have to go through like clearing houses, for example, and civilians and combatants are hard to tell apart. um it's a similar story like what you hear from the Americans in Iraq or Afghanistan, but for them there's like that added distance ke
Yeah,
they don't look like them, but you're going through a
yeah,
house and you're like, bro, ek to, there's a risk of me injuring a civilian. Plus, we all are like the same type of general people.
exactly.
We look the same. There's
Yeah,
common cultures.
yeah. Not even that, to be honest. For Americans, like most of their war would be like they'll have sniper involves or a lot of
Sure.
aerial power. Seldom would they ever go in an area in the regular fashion, in a conventional way, with actually men dropping men. They show that in movies, but they don't
Okay.
actually do it.
Okay.
Most of they have unmanned planes and stuff. They don't expose their men like that at all.
Sure.
Whereas we are the complete opposite. We actually do. So it's very raw, and you have to make a decision in real time. All right, you have to keep your wits about what's going on. No matter how hard you try to let the civilians know that, all right, we're going to come over, and if you're there, you need to leave, because
Yeah.
you're doing this operation. But still, people are just set in their ways over there, and that's what you need to be cognizant of as well. That those people who where the education level and everything is just obviously there's no education there. That's all they know. That valley is all they know. That that woman who's the 80-year-old just smoking a hookah or whatever. She doesn't know anything else. She doesn't even know she's in Pakistan, bro.
Yeah.
Like she probably thinks she's in Afghanistan, and because they don't know Urdu. A lot of people, they don't know Urdu, so it's you have to be cognizant of that, and you need to be aware. Otherwise, you can end up taking an innocent life. It's a very tricky game. So you just
are you coming to like the extreme present? Abhi Afghanistan mein, we see that the Taliban are like taking over a lot of territory, like most of Afghanistan, at like an extreme high rate of speed. I don't even know if these are like the same Taliban that you might have encountered. But does that like does that feel like, so are you surprised? Are they just like, this is what they do? I don't know why I'm asking this sort of question.
Not really. I mean, this was bound to happen. It was only a matter of when it was going to happen. All right. Obviously, I mean, if we never learn from history, that's what the Soviet did, and here we are.
Yeah.
And exactly, it was just a replay of what the US did in Afghanistan. Those people are like battle hardened. That's all they know. All right.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. They don't have like air cons and comfortable cars and stuff, or anything else to lose. They don't know that. They don't appreciate that sort of a lifestyle. They haven't seen it. They have nothing to lose.
If history is any lesson, and a lot of people, and it's not just the Soviets, a lot of people have tried over there. It's just not. No matter how many, they would always fight among themselves. But whenever an external power comes into play, they always get together, and then they always make it a purpose too.
Yeah. Also, I think it really matters, like how much how much thought you put into, because it's theoretically easy to like win a war. Abhi aap gaye, you have like extremely superior firepower. Aapne unko bhaga diya, sab kuch ho gaya. What do you do after that to make sure that it's sustainable? I don't think the US did anywhere close to, because like there's so many stories that come out that like just the lack of information available or even looked at the time. Bas decisions ho rahe hain, haan yaar ye kar do, wo kar do, and like 20 years they were there, and khatam in like a couple of weeks.
In bookish terms, like how you win a war or a battle basically is, if so you have two sides, right? Blue Line and Foxland, and one of them attacks the other. All right, and they had an objective. All right, so we need to clear this ridge XYZ by this 1500 hours or whatever. All right, if they are able to achieve that, all right, so in bookish terms, they have won that battle.
Yeah.
Right. Similarly, in war, you will say, all right, this is our objective. All right, we need to, for example, go to like in an enemy country, or if you're invading or if you're attacking, so we need to get that supply route, or maybe any objective. We need to capture Lahore and eat in Lahore Gymkhana or whatever. And if you're not able to do that, then you've lost the battle, and therefore the war as well. So this is what it's all about. So what was the American objective over there when they basically moved? They were like, okay, this is a bunch of terrorists, Al-Qaeda and whatever. All right. And these people really need some democracy shoved down their throat, because
सारे मसले हल हो जाएंगे.
सारे मसले हल हो जाएंगे. And obviously now apparently nahi hua hai bilkul 20 saal ke andar, and
like,
we are back to square one now.
they appointed like Zabardasti a government of like somebody who wasn't even like from there. Sure, he was Afghan, but wo bahar se laaye, imposed like I don't know how much attention was given to like the local culture and the values and incorporating that into it.
So in this world of profit and monetary gains,
Yeah.
all right, everything has become an industry now. All right, armies have become industries. Like you see in sports, it's with what BCCI is doing, and with IPL and all these leagues, they're just money making machines. So when the objective is from increasing your equity, and we were talking about all the profits and stuff, when that's your objective,
that's the objective. Yeah.
All the other things, they get shoved down the rug.
Yeah.
And
Ki banda bhi Ghani bhi, I think Ashraf Ghani was like I'm not sure, but he was like a Halliburton exec or something, or a contact through that, which was like connected to Bush ke zamane ke sare oil people. तो वो उसके through, like he wasn't even like a politician. लगा दिया बस आप president बन जाए अफगानिस्तान के.
So basically, it wasn't their objective. So the betterment of the society, and obviously they portrayed it that way. Apparently, obviously, it wasn't. That wasn't the real issue there. It was something else. We probably will never know. But if you can do 2 + 2, you will obviously just follow the money trail. You'll find out what's going on in the world everywhere. It's about, man is territorial by nature. So first it's territory, then controlling the gains,
resources
in that territory, resources, and then it's just about the money. And then you can inflate it or deflate it or play however the fuck you want. And if you have the media, you can make the right look wrong and the wrong look right, because obviously it's about the money. Those people are taking money as well. And we as laymen, because any information that we receive, we think, and we don't do our research, and there's no credibility in the source. A layman just believes whatever it's being shown on the TV, right? You show somebody that a person with a beard, this kind of a look, or if they're wearing a rabbi cap or whatever, this kind of a person is bad news, and you need to stay away from that region. So anytime you're in a stressful situation, right, where normally you would probably think twice about taking an aggressive action, you probably won't, because already it's
you've been conditioned.
at the back of your head. You've been conditioned. Exactly.
So how do you feel as the education wali baat that you were saying, and people have been primed and stuff, what was your jab election bhi ho rahe the, you were there, and ever since then, social media, you became aware of it, or in a much bigger way. How do you have you had to deal with like non-army people's armchair analysis of army ka influence, good, bad, in Pakistan, sab agensiyon ka kaam hai, is tarah ka scene, like does that come up? Because I mean, I don't know anything, but mere samne aata hai, main kuch keh deta hu from based off whatever I read 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And I have no real exposure to it. But has that come up in your personal life? Also, you left Pakistan, so maybe you've escaped the worst of it. But yeah.
Only all the time. I mean, like, especially like we have like close to 200 million people in Pakistan, and every other Tom, Dick, and Harry is a keyboard jihadist, right?
Yeah. We're all experts,
and everyone is a defense analyst and a think tank in Pakistan, so they have their say, and that's fine, man. Like, I mean, people have their opinion. At the end of the day, if you really believe in what you're doing, and if you think, and you can see the results of that as well coming to fruition, you just, because people when I was in PMA, my platoon commander, the first thing that he said in Fallen was, opinions are like assholes and everybody has one. So that's something that is really close to my heart. And before that, I would actually let a lot of people affect me, and you would take everything to, okay, no, maybe this is like a personal attack on me. But then you realize that this person, wherever they're coming from, is a position of ignorance, and obviously this has no backing or no knowledge whatsoever. And you don't have the time to answer everyone. But sometimes, obviously, people, when people have influence, in a society like ours, where the media is they'll portray whatever they want, and wherever the funds are coming from, it becomes, I think it's a social responsibility of ours, and I feel that it's my responsibility as well, that if somebody likes that in a position of influence, if they talk about like that, you need to negate. That's probably the least and that you can do, that you come out and say, no, this is not this is not what happened, or this is not right. That's the least that you can do. But other than that, like every other person on Facebook, when they're like, oh, army like sara budget kha gayi hai aur ye kar gayi hai, wo kar gayi hai. Like, I mean, there is like no truth whatsoever to that. I have my reservations about the army. There are a lot of bad things that happen, and there are a lot of things that I'm like, okay, no, this needs to stop. And I've tried in my own capacity to change those things, and I feel that to some point I was actually able to do that with my men, with people who were under my influence, and my friends that I know in the army. And because obviously we are evolving as a species as well. It's only fair that the institution gets evolved, or you keep your traditions and stuff, everything that's good, but the world is moving ahead, right? This is the era of modern warfare. There are different tactics going on. There's cyber warfare, and there's psychological ops and all that stuff, and that's true. Like earlier it used to sound like maybe a conspiracy theory, but now that when you see that you can move the polls in anyone's favor, and you can just do anything with the power of media now. Our minds are being harvested now with companies like the big tech and your Facebook, the kind of ads that you see. Everything is just conditioned, and you are the product basically. When we're living in this sort of a environment, I think anyone in their capacity, they should speak out whenever they see injustice, and whenever they see any false information being spread about. Then most of the people they can actually make sense of things as well.
Do you feel, given your own, but just to like flip that sort of argument a bit, given that you spent so much time in the army, and even though you're not like a close-minded hyper patriot kind of person, do you feel that there is perhaps legitimate criticism of some things about the army that you perhaps were not aware of, and if shown to you, you will be able to readily accept it? Or do you think it'll be like a blind spot for you a bit?
No, not really. I feel like I try to be very objective and unbiased in the things, but at the same time, there are things that and I think about those things a lot. But then I'm like, okay, no, I have actually personally experienced that. So I have whatever I think and say has to have some sort of authority at least. And that other person who, whatever they said was, okay, I'll do my own, research, and I'll tell you. But then when I tell you, you don't have the experience and I have the experience. So when we are having an argument or a debate or whatever, at least, try to, walk a mile in my shoe. So no, there are some, like, what, I don't know, specify, like, give me an example.
I'm just asking, like, generally, because obviously you've had your set of experiences and you've seen everything that you have seen, so obviously there can be no denying that, because it's fact. It's been your life. But given the nature, and there's also a lot of like psychological and emotional, like you mentioned, the conditioning ki hum sab, we're like, there's one army, one purpose, Pakistan ki difa, wagera, wagera. That's in your mindset and everyone's mindset, but everybody in the army does not necessarily have to be playing by the same rules. So both things might be true, where you're like, I didn't see anybody taking things for granted. I'm just making up an example now just to solve. That's fine. But there could be multiple experiences of people where, I think you talked about this, ke matlab jo log army chhod dein, they're like, bro, hum best hain. Like, if you weren't in the army, you don't know shit. And that might be true for a certain perspective.
Absolutely. Okay, this is actually a really good point. Yeah, there is one thing that I find really unnerving, and it's not the army as an institution. It's just individuals in the army. It's just sometimes when, and it's sort of like a wavelength. It has its crests and it has its falls in the relationship between the Pakistan army and the people of Pakistan. Right? Whenever you do something good, you're like, oh, Salala gaya फौज बड़ी fit है, क्योंकि इन्होंने जो है पानी के अंदर जाके उन्होंने लोगों को बचा लिया. और जरा सा कुछ like anything controversial happens and like, oh no, फौज हमारी बिल्कुल ही फारिग है. So this, I feel like we can close that gap. The army can actually close that gap if we expose a life of a soldier, or your everyday soldier to the people. I think this is now the time, because there's this really big gap between the civilian and the Pakistan, and because of the things like the unity and everything which is required in the army, especially when you're in the battlefield, it has its, on the flip side, it has its negative effects as well, like being, all right, I'm all that, or मैं क्लफ गांव के अंदर जी मैं क्लफ वाली शलवार में पहन के जाऊंगा, सारे सलूट मारेंगे मुझे. Yeah, that's what a soldier does, right? Like that's because for them it's a matter of pride, which is good. But like as you move up the ranks, and as this sort of sometimes it can be cancerous as well, and as it spreads, that's how you think about other people. When you grow in the ranks, you think, okay, I know everything, but the other person doesn't know. So there's lack of collaboration, therefore. And when there's lack of collaboration, distances just grow, and the divide sort of becomes stronger and stronger.
How does the army, is there like this is a completely now random trivia kind of bachon wale sawal. Is there like a lot of banter between the different types of armed forces, like army versus air force versus navy?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All the time. Okay. It starts from the military academy. So we have our sports team, and sometimes the naval officers come, and we go to the Rasalpur Academy, and sometimes they come to Gakul and all this stuff. So it's sort of healthy competition that starts from there, and it's always there. We're because especially when you're doing like a joint operation, like a forward air controller sort of a course, or an ops area where the Air Force comes in and softens up the target, and then you go in. So obviously you have to be in comms with all the other arms, everyone that's involved.
So, there's my second teenage boy question was, how different is then the training that you went through and the experiences that you had in terms of operations to what like perhaps the SSG would be doing?
Okay, so the operations, SSG was the arm, basically. SSG was it was just a division before, now it's a corps. The corps of SSG was the only corps that they were actually fighting while there was no fights. Fights were going on. There was no battles going on. Okay. They were the only ones who were actually exposed to warfare. But now infantry is as well. So I would say the level of infantry in Pakistan has gone up by leaps and bounds because of all the experiences that we've had. My unit alone has been in operational area thrice now. So that's just 6 years of active battle, and that too low intensity conflict battle where you never know. So you have to be prepared everywhere. So our army is battle hardened a lot. So what was the question again? It was
how does the SSG key training and then experience compared to
but these guys, they go a lot to operational areas. They go for a short period of time, and then they come back, but then they go more frequently than infantry does, right? So they would probably come in and do a single operation for a couple of months, then they'll go back to wherever they were before, and then come back probably again in 6 months or 8 months or maybe next year. Whereas an infantry unit would come in and they'll do their operations, and they'll be there for a set period of time, for let's say 2.5 years, and all the operations they'll do with or without the help of SSG or other arms.
Right.
And then they'll go back, and then they'll spend a considerable amount of time in elsewhere, and then probably they'll come back again to some different operational area. That's what's happening now. I feel experience-wise, there's not much difference now, but training, definitely, those guys, like their training is very, very difficult, and a lot of people go through that. one of my unit officers who actually got. There are heaps of officers that I know who are in the SSG, but this one officer who actually was with me when we got the gallantry award, he was actually a diehard SSG sort of a soldier. Like if you look at him, you'll be like, okay, ye jo hai na, gorilla, gorilla. So like very well built, and it's all about मैं बस घुस के जाना पड़ जाने वाला scene.
Right.
बंदे का होता the stupid brave scene.
Stupid brave.
वो जो है like a jarhead complete.
Right.
And an amazing guy, amazing soul, and he's just, if you meet him, you'll be like, oh my god, like I need to spend more time with this guy because of the positivity that emanates from him, right? And he, like, even after now, he's a colonel now, right? And back when we were captains then, and he was my senior, obviously. But like we have this amazing friendship, and I just met him 6 months back as well when I was in Islamabad. And he did a lot of other operations even after I left the army, and he got even more awards later on. So you need that sort of that he couldn't he broke his back in the final leg of SSG, so they were about to be passed out next week, and then he got injured. So he wasn't able to, he didn't get into SSG, but he probably has more gallantry awards than a normal SSG person would have. So he's achieved all that he wanted, which is good. So the SSG training is it's different. It's tough. It's much tough. They go through a 9 months course, and they do a lot of crazy shit, man. Like I never even wanted to go into in infantry.
Is there the one crazy story that you tell people, like war stories kind of thing, that you're at liberty to say, please, again? No, is there like that one, or is that the one that you already mentioned?
No, there are actually a lot of stories. I don't know. Sometimes, like, you have to really think about what you say, and when you're writing, you can actually gather your thoughts and see. Okay, maybe I can omit this detail and I can omit that detail. But when you're speaking, you sort of it's just coming up from within you. You're just sort of describing your experience on the go. So I feel really uncomfortable, sharing that, because you never know, and because it is bound to happen. When I share a story like that, it is bound to happen, and I can't do that because I'm bound by secrecy law.
Okay. I was wondering, could you write a book or something, like people do in America?
Absolutely, I have. I've actually started working on one. Yeah, man.
Great.
But yeah, there's a long way to go now, because it's only just started. It's only been 6 months now. I felt like there are a lot of experiences there that need to be told.
What's the process like? I mean, even if you write it, like usually, you have to get, like, my only exposure is America. You have to get like the Pentagon to like go through it and say,
but that's for non-fiction, right? But if you're writing like
you're doing fiction
sort of. Yeah, if you're doing catch-22 sort of a thing, so you can actually relay what you want to relay as well as
Sahi.
You know what I mean? So that's the idea.
Okay,
let's see where
that's
things
great.
go.
Yeah. Right. So the weird question that we ask at the end of this, is there anything else anything else important that you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. We agreed on an hour, and now it's been like what?
It's been. I mean, bro, your story was.
But it's good. No, thanks, man.
Yeah, I was wondering, beach mein main puchun, should I ask him if he has like anything else to do? Because
ask anything. Ask anything. If I'm uncomfortable, I'll obviously.
No. I was like, मैं पूछूं, like, if you have something else to do in life, because like बात तो चले जा रही है और एक घंटे की बात हुई थी, but now we're like at 2.5.
Oh no. Yeah.
The stupid question that we always ask, that people often don't have an answer for. Do you have any Jinn stories?
Any Jinn stories?
Yeah.
Okay. No, nothing that I experienced myself. All right. Obviously, so this one time in Siachen, right? And but it sort of, I really felt that, like, it didn't occur. I didn't I didn't experience it on my own, like any Jinn or whatever. But somebody else did. What happened was, we were actually moving from point A to point B in Siachen, one post to another, and in Siachen, if you start from the headquarter, right, it can take you like good about 15-20 days just to reach where you want to go. So you start in the morning, then you walk all day or climb or whatever. You go to one checkpoint, and then the next day the other one, and then the other one. So I was actually climbing down the headquarter and going to this check post, right, in the middle, and we had about 10 a party of 10 people, soldiers, and in the middle, a blizzard came, and then we sort of got scattered all around. But everyone knew, and they had maps, and everyone knew where they were. So I just told everyone to, just go to the nearest check post, right? So we reached over there. It was something about 8-9 at night, around that sort of time. But one out of the section strength, he was missing. All right, so we just waited for him. It was crazy blizzard going on. So he was a sepoy, right? He, after like 2-3 hours, he came, and he was like, "Oh, there was a really bad blizzard going on. शुक्र है आपने जो ना हवलदार आसिफ को आपने भेज दिया. अगर आपने उनको नहीं भेजा होता तो हम जो है क्या कहते हैं, बिल्कुल मैं नहीं जो है आ पाते या नहीं आ पाते." I was like, Havaldar Asif to koi, like, I don't know any Havaldar Asif in my company over there, but we also had artillery and other arms with us, which I wasn't really acquainted with them.
Yeah.
So a Subedar from the artillery, where I was there, from the artillery battalion, was like, "Oh, there was a Havaldar Asif. Let's go describe. Like, can you describe Havaldar Asif?" And then he described him, and then he showed a picture. He was like, "Was this guy?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was the guy." So that guy had actually, passed away a couple of months ago in a landslide. Wow. Just around the same area. It was that, and that was like we were in a big igloo over there, right, where this all was happening in front of me, and I was the only officer there, so I was like, everything was happening in front of me, and that was what is going on? That was a crazy story. That's the only one that I know of, and then we've heard different stories of people being slapped on duties and stuff in Siachen.
Siachen. Okay.
In Siachen, so if you doze off, you get slapped across the face by a spirit. I don't know, man. I believe in everything.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, I start believing. Till the time proven otherwise, I feel there's truth to every story.
Yeah.
Maybe there's different forms of, because we live in a metaphysical world, and there's a lot can happen. First, we didn't even know that the world was a sphere, and
I mean
the world is flat, but where we've come,
there is a risk. There is a risk with the level of comfort and knowledge that you get, that you feel like bas itna hi hai. And you're like, there's there could be it's we have a lot of,
bro. We only have 5 senses, right? We're bound by space and time, and I don't know what is going on behind me because my focus is on you, all right? And I can only use my senses like that. But what psychology tells you is you are in a different state. When you're sleeping, you're in a different world. There's a different cognitive state, right? And then you die and stuff, and and then you read in the Quran that people who get martyred, they're actually getting risk from their Lord. So and they're in different monotheist religions. You have a concept of the afterlife, so they can't be all wrong. There has to be some sort of truth to it, right? So and then there's science. There's Higgs boson particles and the string theory, and the particle behaves as a wave, and then it's there, and then it's not. What is going on? So you can't I believe in everything.
I mean? I think that's valid. That's a good way to approach life. A weirdly personal question before we end. Given your experiences, obviously you live in Australia now, if your kids want to join the army, at this moment, what is your gut reaction to that idea?
Yeah, let them. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because, and not because के जो है सबसे पहले पाकिस्तान और ये वो. It's not, I mean.
No, what if it's the Australian army?
Love for my country. No.
अच्छा Pakistan army है तो
Pakistan army है.
You understand.
Because,
okay.
Yeah. because the thing is, the way I'm raising my kids, I have a daughter, I don't have a son.
Sure.
But you have ladies in the army as well.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If there's no purpose, my kid would not feel the same way anyway. The way that they're being raised, you have to have a proper purpose. And if you don't have that purpose, and even if there's a little bit of variance between the reality and morality and what you're actually doing, and one of the reasons I actually left the army was because, like I told you, I'm a pacifist now, and I don't want to be in a situation like that before, unless it's thrusted upon me. So for discipline and to have life experiences, because this is also a reality. My reality when I was spending time over there, it was completely different. While maybe my friends were partying and in clubs and stuff, I was actually in a bloody bunker or an igloo. Right? So that was my reality. And now I realize that that's a lot of other people's reality as well, in FATA and different countries now, in Yemen and Syria and so many countries, in Iran and in Palestine.
Many aren't even like soldiers.
Oh man, it's crazy. And the amount of trauma that kids are going through these days, it's just horrible. So I made it a point just to help those sort of people in whatever capacity that you can, maybe in a medically or financially or whatever, and just not be associated with violence in whatever way, even if it's for the right. Because I think I've played my part, and I've spent a lot of time in the army, and I think the government recognizes as well. And it was then time to call it a day and maybe serve humanity in a different way. Yeah.
Okay. I think this has been great. It's only been 3 times as long as we decided, but I think there's a lot of value in this experience. I certainly got what I was looking for, and because this, again, like you mentioned, this sort of perspective is very rarely talked about. Pakistan mein ya to army mein everyone's like a super patriot fighting farishta, ya phir chief of army stuff, and there's nobody in between. So those are the only perspectives. I think it's great, man. Is there anything you want to plug before you go? Like, do you have like an Instagram you're working on or something? Or
oh yeah, actually I do have an Instagram, and I in my leisure time I do play some gigs.
I have seen videos. Yes, I have seen
as well, and like that's something that I just do in my spare time. So if you can give me a shout out, that'd be awesome.
Did you learn to play guitar and sing like after the army, during? You mentioned you were in dramatics.
I always sort of I was in the drama society in PMA, and we did a lot of singing over there. But like I was always a singer, but like properly playing the guitar, I learned it over here in Australia.
Right. Okay.
Because
do people in Australia,
there are some videos. I don't know if you've seen that video about there's me singing in Siachen.
No, I haven't seen that video.
Have you seen that video? It sort of got viral back in the day. I was in Siachen and we were singing this Bullisha Kakalam.
If you have it, right? I'll add it to the episode.
Oh really?
Yeah. Mil jaye to mujhe bhej do. I'll add it definitely.
It wasn't that great, man.
Also, do you have a picture of yourself like PMA ke time pe?
PMA ke time pe? Yeah, uniform.
Yeah. Skinny Baqar.
I do, man. I do.
Yeah,
I'll flick you a couple of photos, and then you can decide whatever you want.
I think that'll be great. Do people have questions in Australia? Oh, Pakistan mein tum army mein the. What was it like? Have you ever?
Yeah, Australians don't give a fuck about right? They just they're like, we need to work from 9 to 5, and that's it, and then we're gonna fuck off to the pub, and just drink our asses off, and that's it.
Okay,
that's what they do, and then they're happy, and they're like, we don't want to get involved. Their government is obviously sort of they're polarized, obviously, with America and whatever they stand for, but the people are like, we don't have anything to do with Americans or whatever. It's a blessing that we are so far away. We don't even have the same seasons like the rest of the world. So just leave the fuck alone,
It's
alone.
I think, Baqar, this has been great. Thank you for all your time.
Likewise,
I'm not sure, but I think we can do, if you ever want to come back, talk about something else, let me know.
No worries, man.
We'll set something up. What a coincidence that ye episode, I don't know tumhari yahan kya date hai, but meri yahan still 14 August.
It's 14th. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I actually thought about that. I was like, what? No,
I don't know. This will come out in like a few weeks, but देखें नियत हमारी जो थी ना वो 14 अगस्त related ही थी.
वाकई यार.
All right, man.
Pakistan Zindabad.
People watching Pakistan Zindabad, TPR Pod, Mohalapur, the links below. I think this was great, and we'll try and do some more stuff. ठीक है जी.
Likewise, bro. Likewise.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Ready, yes, sir. पढ़ इल्म ते फाज़ल हो कदे अपने आप नू पढ़िया ना ओ भज भज वड़ना मंदर मसी ਤੇ ਕਦੇ ਮਨ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੜਿਆ ਉਹ ਲੜਨਾ ਰੋ ਸ਼ੈਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਦੀ ਨਫਸ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੜਿਆ आसमानी उड़दियां फड़ो नहीं जेड़ा घर बैठा करी हो जा बस करी से